Good evening, viewers. Today we are going to review the Back to the Future series. Starting with the first movie, Back to the Future from 1985. Marty McFly, played by Michael J. Fox from Teen Wolf, is a typical 1980s California teenager. He plays guitar, hangs out with a mad scientist, and skateboards to school every day with a Huey Lewis soundtrack. Mad scientist? Yes, Doc Brown, played by Christopher Lloyd from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, invents a time machine and installs it in a DeLorean car. Thanks to the intervention of some Libyan terrorists, the stereotypical 1980s bad guys, Marty ends up driving that DeLorean back 30 years to 1955. For the first 20 minutes of the story, it's spent setting up everything for the 1950s. Conveniently for Marty, every middle-aged person spent the entire day telling him what they did in the exact week he gets sent back to. All he has to do is not interfere with the timeline. Can he do that? Well, he ends up having to play matchmaker with his own parents, Lee Thompson and Crispin Glover from Charlie's Angels, or he will disappear from history and can never go Back to the Future. This is a wonderful piece of filmmaking that works well on every level. Yes, the exposition-filled first act seems clunky, but this is a comedy drama. It should not be taken too seriously. What seems amazing is that the 1980s Marty would fit in so well almost 30 years later, while by traveling 30 years back into the past, he is completely a fish out of water. The 1950s is as foreign to him as it would be to us. In all fairness, life on Mars did that with the 1970s, but it still makes the mind boggle. Now, the second movie, which came out in 1989, and I reviewed back in 99, Back to the Future 2 was made back-to-back with Back to the Future 3, and it shows in the plot. There are a couple of pieces of foreshadowing for the next film, specifically the references to the Wild West, where the third film is set, and Marty's fate at the end of the film is also foreshadowed. Yeah, well, short and sweet, perhaps, but let's be honest. The second movie is kind of filler, you know. I mean, it's basically setting up the third act, which is the real climax of the story. And please remember, they couldn't even bring back Crispin Glover for the second one, so it might show bits of the first movie, but from a different perspective. But yeah, they had to reenact it with a different actor. I mean, come on. Anyway, Back to the Future 3 released in 1990. This takes up where the previous film left off. Marty was abandoned in 1955, but Doc Brown sent him a letter on how to find the time machine. The doc is in 1885, but Marty discovers that Mad Dog Tannen will murder him. Marty goes back to 1885 instead of forward to 1985. Once Marty and Doc are together again, the duo must reenact the events of the first film, but in the Wild West instead of the 1950s. Also, instead of Marty trying to discourage his own mother's romantic attentions, Doc Brown starts a burgeoning romance with schoolteacher Mary Steenburgen. There are plenty of references to the previous films. Marty meets his ancestor, who looks just like him, and for some reason his wife looks like Lee Thompson, meaning Marty's parents were cousins. Marty poses as Clint Eastwood and reenacts one of the most famous scenes from the spaghetti western series. There is an element of character development in this installment. Marty always gets riled when bullies insult him or challenge him. Will he mellow out into a more 90s type and prevent the terrible personal future that awaits him in Back to the Future 2? Well, I'll be honest here. The first movie is when Marty teaches his father to stand up for himself and not let bullies push him around and call him a chicken. But this is that Marty's meant to become more mature and to not rise to the challenge and to let people push him about. And Come on, seriously? It's trying to undo the good work of the original movie, Telling him not to stick up for himself. But anyway, it has been said that it's impossible to do a female remake of Back to the Future. But the truth is that in 1986, there was a female version of Back to the Future, and that's called Peggy Sue Got Married. Peggy Sue, played by Kathleen Turner, is a divorced woman. Her grown up daughter, Beth, played by Helen Hunt, helps her dress up for the high school reunion. When Peggy gets there, she meets her old friends. The actors have all been aged up to look middle aged, which is made easier by the fact they're 20 somethings who only play teenagers in the second act of the story. Peggy faints. When she wakes up, she discovers she has time traveled back to 1960. This means she gets to enjoy high school all over again. Her choice of love interest is between her husband-to-be Charlie, played by Nicolas Cage from Face Off, and the school's brooding outsider. Peggy's friends are a bunch of familiar faces. Carl Heath is Catherine Hicks, Maddie Nagel, played by Joan Allen, and they're joined by Walter Getz, who's Jim Carrey, the young Jim Carrey, who later on went to do The Truman Show, and even Peggy's younger sister, Nancy, Sophia Coppola, is recognizable. Peggy's grandfather is a member of a lodge. Their Grandmaster, Leo, played by John Carradine from Bluebeard back in 1944, claims he can send her back to the future. Will his magical ritual work? Will she choose to alter her future, dodging a failed marriage, but also failing to have the children she loves? Just like John Carpenter made Starman as a grown-up version of E.T. the Extraterrestrial, so did Francis Ford Coppola deliver a grown-up version of Back to the Future. It did not inspire a couple of sequels and a ride in the Universal Studios theme park. On the upside, it provided work for a couple of his relatives who wanted to become actors. And there you are. I mean, you can't really go further with Back to the Future than this, unless, you want to cover Rick and Morty as well. I think I'm going to do that in a different video. Come on. I mean, we'll be here all day if I start doing Rick and Morty. Anyway, if you find this interesting and informative, please feel free to like, follow, and subscribe. Thank you very much.